Hello, hello! Welcome to Shelf Defiant. I am your disembodied narrator. And we are continuing on with chapter 41 of Jurgen of Compromises in Heaven. These public domain books, of course, are made available from the amazing people at Project Gutenberg. It's not an advert for them. I'm grateful that they make public domain so widely available. All right, last we left Jurgen, he was haggling his way into heaven. So now let's see how he fares within heaven. Jurgen then went unhindered to where the god of Jurgen's grandmother sat upon a throne, beside a sea of crystal. A rainbow, made high and narrow like a window frame, so as to fit the throne, formed an archway in which he sat. At his feet burned 7 lamps, and 4 remarkable winged creatures sat there, chanting softly, "Glory and honor and thanks to him who liveth forever." In one hand of the god was a scepter, and in the other a large book with 7 red spots on it. There were 12 smaller thrones without rainbows upon each side of the god of Jurgen's grandmother, in 2 semicircles. Upon these inferior thrones sat benignant looking elderly angels with long white hair, all crowned and clothed in white robes, and having a harp in one hand, and in the other a gold flask, about pint size. And everywhere fluttered and glittered the multicolored wings of seraphs and cherubs, like magnified parakeets, as they went softly and gaily about the golden haze that brooded over heaven, to a continuous sound of hushed organ music and a remote and indistinguishable singing. Okay, hold on. I gotta back up that word that I think I said incorrectly. Benignant. Benignant. I don't think I've ever seen that.
Benignant.
Okay, what was that?
Benignant.
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 Benignant. Okay, so it's kind, gracious, favorable, as a benignant sovereign.
Benignant.
Am I saying that right?
Benignant.
Benignant. Why does that sound like a cuss word?
Benignant.
Benignant. Okay, well, that sounds vaguely aggressive, but it's supposed to represent kind, gracious, favorable. Benignant.
Benignant.
Yeah, benignant. Okay, well, I do not feel right saying that word. Sounds vaguely threatening. Okay. Now the eyes of this god met the eyes of Jurgen. Excuse me, and Jurgen waited thus for a long while, and far longer, indeed, than Jurgen suspected. "I fear you," Jurgen said at last, "and yes, I love you, and yet I cannot believe. Why could you not let me believe, where so many believed? Or else why could you not let me deride as the remainder derided so noisily? O God, why could you not let me have faith? For you gave me no faith in anything, not even in nothingness. It was not fair." And in the highest court of heaven, and in plain view of all the angels, Jurgen began to weep. "I was not ever your God, Jurgen." "Once very long ago," said Jurgen, "I had faith in you. No, for that boy is here with me, as you yourself have seen. And today there is nothing remaining of him anywhere in the man that is Jurgen. God of my grandmother, God whom I too loved in boyhood," said Jurgen then, "why is it that I am denied a God? For I have searched, and nowhere can I find justice, and nowhere can I find anything to worship. What, Jurgen, and would you look for justice, of all places, in heaven?" "No," Jurgen said. "No, I perceive it cannot be considered here, else you would sit alone. And for the rest, you have looked to find your God without, not looking within to see which is truly worshipped in the thoughts of Jurgen. Had you done so, you would have seen as plainly as I now see, that which alone you are able to worship, and your God is maimed. The dust of your journeying is thick upon him, your vanity is laid as a napkin upon his eyes, and in his heart is neither love nor hate, not even for his own not even for his only worshipper. Do not deride him, you who have so many worshippers. At least he is a monstrous clever fellow, said Jurgen, and boldly he said it, in the highest court of heaven, and before the pensive face of the god of Jurgen's grandmother. Ah, very probably. I do not meet with many clever people, and as for my numerous worshippers, you forget how often you have demonstrated that I was the delusion of an old woman. Well, and was there ever a flaw in my logic? I was not listening to you, Jurgen. You must know that logic does not much concern us, inasmuch as nothing is logical hereabouts. And now the four winged creatures ceased their taunting, and the organ music became a far off murmuring, and there was silence in heaven. And the god of Jurgen's grandmother, too, was silent for a while, and the rainbow under which he sat put off its seven colors and burned with an unendurable white, tinged bluishly, while the god considered ancient things. Then in the silence, this god began to speak. Some years ago, said the god of Jurgen's grandmother, it was reported to Koshe that skepticism was abroad in his universe, and that one walked therein who would be contented with no rational explanation. Bring me this infidel, says Koshe. So they brought to him in the void a little bent gray woman in an old gray shawl. Now, tell me why you will not believe, says Koshe, in things as they are. Then the decent little bent gray woman answered civilly, I do not know, sir, who you may happen to be, but since you ask me, everybody knows that things as they are must be regarded as temporary afflictions and as trials through which we are righteously condemned to pass in order to attain eternal life with our loved ones in heaven. Ah, yes, said Koshe, who made things as they are. Ah, yes, to be sure. And how did you learn of this? Why, every Sunday morning the priest. Okay, let's start that over again. Why, every Sunday morning the priest discoursed to us about heaven and of how happy we would be there after death. Has this woman died then? Asked Koshe. Yes, sir, they told him, recently, and she will believe nothing we explain to her, but demands to be taken to heaven. Now, this is very vexing, Koshe said, and I cannot, of course, put up with such skepticism. That would never do. So why do you not convey her to this heaven which she believes in, and thus put an end to the matter? But, sir, they told him, there is no such place. Then Koshe reflected. It is certainly strange that a place which does not exist should be a matter of public knowledge in another place. Where does this woman come from? From Earth, they told him. Where is that? He asked, and they explained to him as well they could. Oh, yes, over that way, Koshe interrupted. I remember. Now, but what is your name, woman who wish to go to heaven? Steinvor, sir. And if you please, I am rather in a hurry to be with my children again. You see, I have not seen any of them for a long while. But stay, said Koshe. What is that which comes into this woman's eyes as she speaks of her children? They told him it was love. Did I create this love? Says Koshe, who made things as they are, and they told him no, and that there were many sorts of love, but that this especial sort was an illusion which women had invented for themselves, and which they exhibited in all dealings with their children. And Koshe sighed. Tell me about your children, Koshe said then to Steinler, and look at me as you talk, so that I may see your eyes. So Steinler talked of her children, and Koshe, who made all things, listened very attentively. Of Koth, she told him, of her only son, confessing Koth was the finest boy that ever lived. A little wild, sir, at first, but then you know what boys are. And telling of how well Koth had done in business, and of how he had even risen to be an alderman. Koshe, who made all things, seemed properly impressed. Then Steinwer talked of her daughters, of Imperia and Lindamira and Christine, of Imperia's beauty and of Lindamira's bravery under the mishaps of an unlucky marriage, and of Christine's superlative housekeeping. Fine women, sir, every one of them, with children of their own. And to me, they still seem such babies. Bless them. And the decent little bent gray woman laughed. I have been very lucky in my children, sir, and in my grandchildren too, she told Koshé. There's Jurgen, now, my Koth's boy. You may not believe it, sir, but there's a story I must tell you about Jurgen. So she ran on very happily and proudly, while Koshé, who made all things, listened and watched the eyes of Steinberg. Then privately Koshé asked, are these children and grandchildren of Steinberg still as she reports? No, sir, they told him privately. So as Steinberg talked, Koshé devised illusions in accordance with that which Steinberg said and created such children and grandchildren as she described. Male and female, he created them standing behind Steinberg, and were all beautiful and stainless, and Koshé gave life to these illusions. Then Koshé bade her turn about. She obeyed, and Koshé was forgotten. Well, Koshé sat there alone in the void, looking not very happy and looking puzzled and drumming upon his knee, and staring at the little bent gray woman who was busied with her children and grandchildren and had forgotten all about him. But surely, Lindamira, he hears Steinberg say, we are not yet in heaven. Ah, my dear mother, replies her illusion of Lindamira, to be with you again is heaven, and besides it may be that heaven is like this after all. My darling child, it is sweet of you to say that, and exactly like you to say that, but you know very well that heaven is fully described in the book of Revelations, in the Bible, as the glorious place that heaven is, whereas, as you can see for yourself, around us is nothing at all, and no person at all except that very civil gentleman to whom I was just talking, and who, between ourselves, seems woefully uninformed about the most ordinary matters. Can you imagine being a god hearing a human talk about how little you know? That's lovely. Bring Earth to me, says Koshé. This was done, and Koshé looked over the planet and found a Bible. Koshé opened the Bible and read the revelation of St. John the Divine, while Steinberg talked with her illusions. I see, said Koshé. The idea is a little garish, still. So he replaced the Bible and bade them put Earth, too, in its proper place, for Koshé dislikes wasting anything. Then Koshé smiled and created heaven about Steinberg and her illusions, and he made heaven just such a place as was described in the book. And so, Jurgen, that was how it came about, ended the god of Jurgen's grandmother. And me also Koshé created at that time, with the seraphim and the saints and all the blessed, very much as you see us. And of course, he caused us to have been here always since the beginning of time, because that too was in the book. But how could that be done? Says Jurgen with brows puckering. And in what way could Koshé juggle so with time? How should I know, since I am but the illusion of an old woman, as you have so frequently proved by logic? Let it suffice that whatever Koshé wills not only happens, but has already happened beyond the ancientest memory of man and his mother. How otherwise could he be Koshé? And all this, said Jurgen virtuously, for a woman who was not even faithful to her husband. Oh, very probably, said the god. At all events, it was done for a woman who loved. Koshé will do almost anything to humor love, since love is one of the two things which are impossible to Koshé. I have heard that pride is impossible to Koshé. The god of Jurgen's grandmother raised his white eyebrows. What is pride? I do not think I ever heard of it before. Assuredly, it is something that does not enter here. But why is love impossible to Koshé? Because Koshé made things as they are, and day and night he contemplates things as they are. How then can Koshé love anything? But Jurgen shook his sleek black head. That I cannot understand at all. If I were imprisoned in a cell wherein was nothing except my verses, I would not be happy, and certainly I would not be proud. But even so, I would love my verses. I am afraid that I fall in more readily with the ideas of grandfather Satan than with yours, and without contradicting you, I cannot but wonder if what you reveal is true. And how should I know whether or not I speak the truth? The god asked of him, since I am but the illusion of an old woman, as you have so frequently proved by logic. Well, well, said Jurgen, you may be right in all matters, and certainly I cannot presume to say you are wrong, but still, at the same time, no, even now I do not quite believe in you. Who could expect it of a clever fellow who sees so clearly through the illusions of an old woman? The god asked, a little warily. And Jurgen answered, God of my grandmother, I cannot quite believe in you, and your doings, as they are recorded, I find incoherent and a little droll. But I am glad the affair has been so arranged that you may always now be real to brave and gentle persons who have believed in and have worshipped and have loved you. To have disappointed them would have been unfair. And it is right that before the faith they had in you, not even Cochet, who made things as they are, was able to be reasonable. God of my grandmother, I cannot quite believe in you, but remembering the sum of love and faith that has been given you, I tremble. I think of the dear people whose living was confident and glad because of their faith in you. I think of them, and in my heart contends a blind contrition, and a yearning, and an enviousness, and yet a tender sort of amusement colors all. Oh God, there was never any other deity who had such dear worshippers as you have had, and you should be very proud of them. God of my grandmother, I cannot quite believe in you, yet I am not as those who would come peering at you reasonably. I, Jurgen, see you only through a mist of tears, for you were loved by those whom I loved greatly very long ago. And when I look at you, it is your worshippers and the dear believers of old that I remember. And it seems to me that dates and manuscripts and the opinions of learned persons are very trifling things beside what I remember and what I envy. Who could have expected such a monstrous clever fellow ever to envy the illusions of old women? The god of Jurgen's grandmother asked again, and yet his countenance was not unfriendly. Why, but, said Jurgen on a sudden, why, but my grandmother, in a way, was right about heaven and about you also. For certainly you seem to exist and to reign in just such a state as she described. And yet, according to your latest revelation, I too was right, in a way, about these things being an old woman's delusions. I wonder now, yes, Jurgen, why, I wonder if everything is right in a way. I wonder if that is the large secret of everything. It would not be a bad solution, sir, said Jurgen meditatively. The god smiled. Then suddenly that part of heaven was vacant, except for Jurgen, who stood there quite alone. And before him was the throne of the vanished god and the scepter of the god. And Jurgen saw that the 7 spots upon the great book were of red sealing wax. Jurgen was afraid, but he was particularly appalled by his consciousness that he was not going to falter. What? You who have been duke and prince and king and emperor and pope, and do such dignities content a Jurgen? Why, not at all, says Jurgen. So Jurgen ascended the throne of heaven and sat beneath that wondrous rainbow. And in his lap now was the book, and in his hand was the scepter of the god of Jurgen's grandmother. Jurgen sat thus for a while regarding the bright vacant courts of heaven. And what will you do now? Says Jurgen aloud. Oh, fretful little Jurgen, you that have complained because you had not your desire, you are omnipotent over earth and all the affairs of men. What now is your desire? And sitting thus terribly enthroned, the heart of Jurgen was as lead within him as he felt old and very tired. For I do not know. No, nothing can help me, for I do not know what thing it is that I desire. And this book and this scepter and this throne avail me nothing at all, and nothing can ever avail me. For I am Jurgen, who seeks he knows not what. So Jurgen shrugged and climbed down from the throne of the god, and wandering at adventure, came presently to 4 archangels. They were seated upon a fleecy cloud, and they were eating milk and honey from gold porringers. And of these radiant beings Jurgen inquired the quickest way out of heaven. For hereabouts are none of my illusions, said Jurgen, and I must now return to such illusions as are congenial. One must believe in something, and all that I have seen in heaven I have admired and envied, but in none of these things could I believe. and with none of these things could I be satisfied. And while I think of it, I wonder now if any of you gentlemen can give me news of that Lisa who used to be my wife. He described her, and they regarded him with compassion. But these archangels, he found, had never heard of Lisa, and they assured him there was no such person in heaven. For Steinver had died when Jurgen was a boy, and so she had never seen Lisa, and in consequence had not thought about Lisa one way or the other. When Steinver outlined her notions to Koschei, who made things as they are. Now Jurgen discovered, too, that when his eyes first met the eyes of the god of Jurgen's grandmother, Jurgen had stayed motionless for 37 days, forgetful of everything save that the god of his grandmother was love. Nobody else has willingly turned away so soon, Zachariel told him, and we think that your insensibility is due to some evil virtue in the glittering garment which you are wearing, and of which the like was never seen in heaven. I did but search for justice, Jurgen said, and I could not find it in the eyes of your God, but only love and such forgiveness as troubled me. Because of that, should you rejoice, the four archangels said, and so should all that lives rejoice, and more particularly should we rejoice that dwell in heaven, and hourly praise our Lord God's negligence of justice, whereby we are permitted to enter into this place. Okay, well, I was expecting a little bit more from that. Um, but okay. So if God is present but leaves room for interpretation, what does that say about divine silence in our own lives? I don't really have an answer for that, but no, and I just thought I would throw it out there. I don't know what I expected from this chapter. I was expecting something more. It does make me think about the God not being overly present in Cabell's writing. And how does his writing of heaven differ from Dante, Milton? It feels a lot lighter. It's a lot less intense. There's a lot less, I don't know, threat. So, what is Cabell saying about the relationship between divinity and daily existence? Seems pretty open and friendly, according to Cabell's take. All right, well, that's the end of chapter 41. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you found this enjoyable. See you next time.